we are in the midst of a once in a generation, once in a 100-year type of black swan event. But I think what's important about this particular black swan event is that it does create a specific and unique opportunity for leaders and people from different backgrounds to actually come together to collectively deal with the challenge, to press the reset button and to look at what we do post-COVID-19 in terms of how we press the reset button on South Africa's economy, which was in crisis before we went into COVID-19. What COVID-19 has done is it's kind of like it's acted as a catalyst to focus on the critical need to get things done quicker. The things that were creating the inability of the economy to grow in the first place are still there. At a fiscal policy level, government is not cutting its jacket according to the cloth available. State and enterprises are consuming too much resources of government and of the taxpayer and not delivering effective services. So it's and when you talk about structural reforms, it's also about introducing private competition, private participation. And so for something like energy, we already have agreement with Minister Mantashe, for example, in terms of bringing in private power generation for own use as a sort of mechanism. So I think all these things are going to, there's not now much greater urgency because we need to get the economy back on track, and that includes mining. And, in the mining conversation, we have been engaging with Minister Mantashe and with DG Mokoena on some of the key reforms that may be necessary to also enable mining to prosper. But those are very linked to the national country reforms, around infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. The level of engagement that's taken place between ourselves and entities like Transnet and Eskom has been remarkably notched up 2 or 3 different levels. And that's because their businesses rely on us and we rely on them. And I think, as was mentioned in the meeting this morning, Eskom and the industry are joined at the hip. The failure of Eskom is our failure, and if we fail, Eskom fails. So collaboration, working together, but also allowing proper structural reforms are going to be key.
We are in a deep crisis. Okay, I'm not sure the extent with which people really understand the crisis that we are in right now. The crisis has brought about a total realization that the only way we're going to get out of this crisis is through a joint effort. We have to reimagine how that is going to look like and how we're going to achieve it. There's a lot of work that is happening, by the way, behind the scenes with the Business for South Africa in terms of various proposals that have been put to government. But it's going to be a challenge, make no mistake. And it's going to require the broader society to really come and be behind this. Let us find our way, working jointly with government as business, to imagine something which might have seemed unimaginable before.
If we look at where South Africa can be, what is the real potential for mining? What is the real potential for our economy? Because let's face the reality, after the global financial crisis of 2008, South Africa's economy grew at an average of 1.5% per year for a decade under former President Zuma, compared to an average growth rate of just short of, I think it was just over 4% for other emerging economies. So South Africa's growth rate just kind of like, we didn't recover. The rest of the world's and the rest of the emerging economies recovered a lot quicker than we did. And that's because our economy is just not flexible. It's because we've got a number of structural rigidities in place which make it extremely difficult to get that level of innovation, that level of competition, that level of the ability of bringing new technology and other things to play in different market sectors. South Africa's economy has been quite rigid. Mining is not one of those sectors that's been rigid, but we have been affected by the fact that we haven't been able to access reliable, cost-competitive services in certain areas. For example, rail, ports, and others, unless they're privately run or unless there are really good relationships that exist with Transnet. But the point is, if you had private concessionaires working on some of those lines, if you had a lot more private sector generation competing with Eskom and an independent system market operator, running the transmission network, those would be significant game changers. So I'm just agreeing with Mkhulisi, but I'm at a sort of very specific level. I think from a mining perspective, the last time South Africa's high-level geophysical mapping was done at a 50,000 to 1 resolution was basically in the 1970s. I think, in fact, we probably only sitting at about 10% in total that's been done at a high resolution level. Most other countries that are doing exceptionally well on exploration, I mean, just think about this number. South Africa last year attracted 0.1% of the global exploration spend on greenfields exploration. We were 1% of the total exploration spend, but 0.1% of global greenfields exploration spend. And when you look at a number like that, you kind of like think to yourself, we should be at least 3 to 5% of global exploration spend, and we're not, because there are a number of things or obstacles in place which prevent that from taking place. So I think this is the time and the place to have that conversation.